No one expects to attain to the height of learning or arts or power or wealth or military glory without vigorous resolution, strenuous diligence, and steady perseverance. Yet we expect to be Christians without labor, study, or inquiry. This is a quote by William Wilberforce, who is famous for his work to abolish the slave trade in England. Now, what's not as known about Wilberforce is not only his two big concerns. One was slavery, but the second was to reestablish morals, Christian morals in England. He saw that the church had become complacent and kind of become socially comfortable. And so the two things he felt needed to be reestablished was Christian values and morals, and set about setting up certain societies or groups to accomplish this end. But the second thing he saw, and which he is rightly famous for, is his work to abolish the slave trade, seeing it as anti-Christian, seeing it as unmoral. And it's important to realize that by this point, there are many who say, look, slavery was justified, and some Christians justified it. And this is true, and this is a shame and testament to many. But this, largely, people did feel it was wrong. Not only Christians, but by and large, the view of the day was it is a necessary evil, that the economics of the system had become so ingrained in English society and really the world, that to do away with it would be to collapse entire governmental systems as they saw it, and ultimately lead to more evil. So if you collapse entire governments, then everyone will starve. The entire government will go down. And so think of it like today, right? There's a lot of maybe things that we justify and say, well, yeah, this is bad, but if we did away with it, there'd be more harm. So this is how they saw slavery. So Wilberforce doesn't buy this argument. He feels that people will find a way to have labor and get things accomplished apart from slave labor. So he's born into a wealthy family. He goes to college. Isn't the greatest student, it said. One of his friends wrote that he would usually just keep him up talking most of the nights, and neither one of them would get much studying done. But he was he was connected, so he was a good politician, and he gets worked in to kind of upper society and to politics. But he starts to resent politics. As he's in there, he kind of really resents the whole politicking and the dinner parties and just the talking of nonsense. And so he really starts to turn against this kind of affluent life and this whole political insiderism, and wants to accomplish something of value and worth. And so he sees, as I said, that the two big objectives that he feels that the Lord called him to, which he has an experience on Easter Sunday, after he's a politician at some point, has this experience on Easter Sunday where he feels the Lord has got a hold of his heart and calling him to something. So he had been a Christian, but a nominal one, but has this church service experience where he feels he must do some good for the people he serves as a politician. But and you should watch the movie Amazing Grace. The story of William Wilberforce is a great movie, made maybe a decade ago, but really well done. But I want to point out that sometimes we, even in the movie, could fly by as though he just had this call and he abolished slavery in a rather quick time. But he thought he would. In 1789, he really set out with his connections and his political power. He thought he was going to abolish slavery rather quickly. But he actually had his bill defeated in 1791, 1792, 1793, 1797, 1798, 1799, 1804, and 1805. What does this mean? This means that he continued, he labored, he began, so all these defeats before he finally started to chip away at slavery. And it wasn't instant. He's basically ratified a certain bill to make it harder for them to trade. Then he basically put different restrictions on what they could trade and the length of time and all these different things, right? So he kind of incrementally chipped away at the system. And this is an important concept because today there is a huge debate on immediatism versus incrementalism. And what we see in Wilberforce, whether this is the right system or not, is this is the system that ultimately worked and would really challenge the American system. Even though the American system would go on and a civil war would need to be fought to end it, this is what really brought about the people questioning if it was necessary or needed to continue. People felt like, hey, if the English can do without it, why can't we? So this really started to sow the seeds of the abolition movement in America, Wilberforce's work. And so I think You know, if it highlights anything, we should seek to abolish sin as quickly as possible in our own lives and the lives around us. But when given opportunity, we have to do what we can and not give up. And I think that's a great testament to Wilberforce. I want to read a quote here. It said that ultimately Wilberforce didn't get to see really the fruit of his efforts. It was 3 days before he died in 1807 that he heard his bill to abolish the slave trade had been passed. And what I think I wanted to really point out in this video is it shows that when God calls you to something, you tirelessly work at it. You need these type of people in the world that through defeat over and over, they're defeated and people go against them and they feel like they want to give up, but they push on until the end. And that's what we're called to do in our faith. But really, when God calls you to a bigger thing, to push on, you might not even see it come to fruition in your lifetime or at the end of your life, like Wilberforce. But ultimately, when God calls you to something, you see it through. And he's called us all to be faithful to him first and foremost. So let us see that through and then follow in the other objectives in which he has led us. So we're bringing up Wilberforce today because without a guy like Wilberforce, I don't think we would realize how long slavery would have continued. I think at some point it gets abolished because it is just an archaic system that people realized was immoral. But I think apart from his work, the way it lives on and the length of time it lives on, and that would filter into Americas and elsewhere, it would be hard to fathom. And so his dedication to the Lord and to seeing to put in an end to what he saw as sinful, we must not only give him credit, but realize how much he probably affected the world around us today that we don't often think about. Have a blessed day.